Now, to fill all this out, you could use x squared plus y squared equals 1, plug in the values of each of these, and solve for them. So for example, if I know 45 degrees is halfway, okay, I shouldn't say 45 degrees. I know halfway to 1 is right here, and that goes all the way up to where 60 degrees hits the circle, and it can go down this way as well. So I know if x is 1/2 squared plus y squared equals 1. 1/2 squared is really 1/4. Solve for y squared by subtracting 1/4. Y squared equals 3/4. Take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. We get y equals plus or minus the root of 3 over the root of 2, which is just 2. So we end up with these 2 points that are at positive 1/2 and positive root 3 over 2 and 1/2 and negative root 3 over 2. Now, I'm sure that I know what you're thinking. Mrs. Alzarillo, I really, really, really don't want to do that. You don't have to. You are going to need to memorize or be able to reproduce this entire unit circle. So there's 2 things I want you to know. So first of all, when we're naming these points, it's always the cosine of t, comma, sine t. Because remember, back on our last part of our notes, we said that the cosine, x equals the cosine of t, and y equals the sine of t. So with that said, there are 3 pieces of information you need to know to be able to reproduce this entire unit circle on every single point. And here's what you need to know. Are you ready? So the first thing you need to know is this. On the axes, just like the unit circle, it hit on these points that we talked about before because the radius is 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, and 0, -1. Keep in mind these are the values for 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 360, or their equivalent in radians. When we label those, keep in mind, remember, x, y is really cosine t, sine t. So what that means is when I've got this point at 0 degrees, it's 1, 0. We're going to put that right here, 1, 0. Okay, so that's 1 point already done. I know this is 0, 1 up here at 90 degrees. At 180 degrees, we say that's -1, 0 because we're left -1 up nothing. And then at 270 degrees, we've got 0, -1. Okay, so that's one thing that you have to know in order to get those points on your axes. The second thing you need to know is as easy as 1, 2, 3. And here's what I mean by that. In trigonometric functions, there are 3 common reference angles or units of measure, and these are 30-degree angles, 45-degree angles, 60-degree angles. You are definitely going to want to write this down. Keep in mind 30-degree angles are equivalent to pi over 6, 45 is equivalent to pi over 4, and 60-degree angles are equivalent to pi over 3 radians. We're going to say sine over cosine. And this is easy as 1, 2, 3. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to put this in, let's find orange. So we're going to say it's easy as 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Everything over 2. The numerators go root, 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 root. Keep in mind the roots of 1 are just 1, so we don't put the roots on those. So here's what you need to know about this. Remember those values for x and y that we talked about before, cosine and sine? These are those values, sine and cosine. So for every 30-degree reference angle, keep in mind, a reference angle is in reference to the x-axis. So whatever angle it makes to the x-axis is the reference angle. So for example, the reference angles of 30 degrees, I'm going to highlight those in orange from the x-axis, up 30 and down 30 are both 30-degree angles. Also, here's the x-axis here, up 30 degrees and down 30 degrees. These are our reference angles of 30 degrees. So keep in mind, I'm going to use this chart to fill in all those values. There's one more piece of information you need to know that's really easy, and it's starting in quadrant 1, all students take calc. And this tells you what is positive and the rest is negative. So all trig functions are positive in the first quadrant. Only sine and its reciprocal, cosecant, are positive in the second quadrant. Only tangent and cotangent are positive in the third quadrant. And only cosine and secant, its reciprocal, are positive in the fourth quadrant. So here's what that means. As we're doing this, we have to be really careful. We know that cosine is the x value, sine is the y value. So as we're going around the circle, we can make everything positives and negatives where we need them to. So everything's positive in the first quadrant. In the second quadrant over here, remember that only sine is positive. So only the y values are going to be positive. That means the x values are all negative. So I'm going to put negatives on all of these. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive. Well, remember, there's no tangent here. There's only sine and cosine for x and y. So everything is negative. And that actually makes sense because here the x values are negative and so are the y values. And then in the fourth quadrant, we know that only cosine is positive. So sine is negative, which tells me the y values are negative. And look at that. This one already agrees right here. So now that I've got my pluses and minuses all loaded in there, let's go ahead and do our numbers. So remember how we talked about this is 30 degrees. Every 30-degree angle, the cosine is root 3 over 2. The sine is 1/2. So we're literally going to go in here. At 30 degrees, we know cosine, which is x, is root 3 over 2, comma, sine is 1/2. And every time there's a 30-degree angle, again right here, root 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. And lastly, root 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. Root 3 over 2, comma, 1/2. So on each of these points, 30 degrees, a reference of 30 degrees, which just so happens to be 150 degrees. At 210, that's a reference of 30 degrees. There's our point and our reference of 30 degrees. So see how all of these 30-degree angles almost have the same point, just their positives and negatives are different. We're going to keep going around the circle, and now we're going to do 45. I'm going to put that in dark green. 45 is really easy because the numbers are both the root of 2 over 2. So at our 45-degree reference angles, I'm going to highlight that in green. So from 0 up to 45 degrees right here, we know that's our root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. Our positives and negatives are already there. Root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. Positives and negatives are already there. Root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. That's our reference angle of 45 degrees down. And our reference angle from 0 down here is 45 degrees again. That's root 2 over 2, root 2 over 2. We're almost done. Last one to fill up our entire unit circle. We're so close. And I'm going to put this in purple. And this time cosine is 1/2. Sine is root 3 over 2. So for our 60-degree angles, that's this line here, this line here, this line here, and this line here. So from 0 up to 60 degrees, we say that's okay, 1/2 and root 3 over 2. Again here, from the x-axis up to 120, that's a reference angle of 60 degrees. And so we say that's 1/2, comma, root 3 over 2. From the 180-degree angle down to 240, that's another 60-degree angle. So we say that's 1/2, comma, root 3 over 2. And our last one here we already did. And that's a 60-degree angle from 0 degrees down to 300. And there you have it, all the things you need to memorize that unit circle. Now, could you just rote memorization every point, every value on the circle? Absolutely. I'm giving you these 3 things. I know that it seems intense, but I promise you these 3 things make it really easy for you to remember every single angle without having to use rote memorization. So these 3 pieces of information here make the rest of this possible.